Hello, I'm Annette Badland, and you're listening to The Sirens of Audio. Shake your booty. I'm shaking mine.
Coming up in today's episode, we're going to be speaking with Elizabeth Morton. She is the wife of Fifth Doctor Peter Davison, and she's going to be talking with us about her recent book release, as well as some of her other work, and she's going to be talking about her appearance on Big Finish with the Fifth Doctor. We're also going to be talking a little bit about other families who work in Doctor Who across various media, whether it be television or audio. So make sure you comment below. Let us know if we've missed anyone, or if you can think of anyone else that may be part of a Doctor Who family who is involved with the show. Finally, we're going to be reviewing a couple of things. Philip is going to be reviewing a recently released Lost story, and I'm going to be recommending something that Philip recently reviewed by sending out a few little tweets. I read them, I listened to the story, and I enjoyed it. Stick around to find out which one it was, and we hope you enjoy the show. G'day audiophiles, this is The Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who in the audio medium. I'm Dwayne.
And I'm Philip. G'day Dwayne, g'day audiophiles.
How's it going, Philip? We're doing this in the daytime again.
I know.
Something's wrong.
Well, we need to stop saying that because it's becoming the norm.
True. How are you?
I am doing fine, thank you. How are you going?
Not too bad. It's a very rainy old day here in Tasmania, so it's a good day to keep the PJs on and listen to some audio.
Yeah, well, it's not raining here. It's cool. Actually, we've had very hot days the last couple of days. Today's the first day our air conditioner kicked in at some point, so that's unusual. But no, it's fine. It is winter.
Right. I'm sure everyone wants to know about our weather in our locations. So,
yeah,
thanks for continuing to listen.
Most of the people listening to us are in nice sunny weather, I believe. Mind you, I did see that yesterday was 1 degree warmer here than it was in London, and they're in summer.
Right. Well, that's good for London, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. London has a lovely couple of months, usually.
Well, London's one city, but Liverpool is a city that we're going to be talking a lot about today.
Yes.
Because today we're going to be speaking with Elizabeth Morton, and for those who don't know who Elizabeth is, well, she is actually the wife of Peter Davison, which is why I've cleverly titled this episode The Doctor's Wife, to try and catch everyone off guard. She is actually the Doctor's wife.
Yes, so literally.
An interesting situation an interesting family to be in with so many Doctor Who connections. But Elizabeth has recently released a book. We're going to talk about that. But before we talk to her about some of her work and some of her Doctor Who experiences as well, I want to talk a little bit about some of the Doctor Who episodes that she's been in. But before we do, Philip, do you know what?
What, Dwayne?
We have to jump down the rabbit hole. Let's go! All right, Philip. Today is one of those days, you're going to hate me, but it's one of those days where you are going to give me the rabbit hole question. Go for your life. Only because I didn't think of one myself.
Gee, thanks for that. Well, as we're dealing with the Doctor's wife, how many other Doctor Who family members and connections can you think of in Doctor Who who appeared on audio or the series?
Well, we've got the Troughton boys.
Yes.
Of course. But not only that, Big Finish have been using Sam Troughton as well. Who's he the son of? Is he Michael's son?
He's Michael's son. And I know Sam Troughton best from Robin Hood, because he was in the BBC more recent production. I say recent, it's probably 10 years old or more now. But actually, he was all through that. But yeah, so you've got Michael playing now his father's role as the second Doctor.
Yep.
But we also, we've had Michael as well, and David playing, of course, Peladon throughout. And as you said, yeah, we've had the other Troughton. And of course, what I hadn't realised is Weasley, not Weasley, in Harry Potter films, Dursley, the son.
Never seen him. Don't know.
You never watched the Harry Potter films?
No.
Oh, okay. Because that's also one of Patrick's grandsons playing the boy Dursley. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But
okay,
he's another Troughton, but he's not. He's got his mother. It must be from a mother's line or something, because hasn't got the Troughton name.
Sylvester McCoy's son or sons, was he two sons, appeared in The Curse of Fenric?
They did,
and
I think one of them has actually been on Big Finish. I've got a vague feeling one of them had a role in Big Finish as well. But yes, that's another.
Oh,
connection.
Speaking of Big Finish, Rosie Baker has just done an interlude. I can't remember which one it was. Or was she announced as doing an interlude? She's done a Sixth Doctor one.
Rosie's been Colin Baker's daughter, and she has actually done some other Big Finish stories too. Yep.
So we've got George Watkins as well, which we're going to mention. So he's related to the Davisons. He's the nephew of Peter.
That's right. I've forgotten that one.
So he played Mark, didn't he, in the Mark arc?
Yes, he did, and he was superb. I actually had forgotten that connection. You're right. He was good. He was very good. Yeah, absolutely. And of course,
anyone else?
Georgia Moffat.
Yes.
Both Peter's daughter and David's wife.
I'm thinking outside the Davison / Tennant family.
Yes. Okay.
Who else have we got? So we've got
Sadie Miller, of course, from Elizabeth Sladen, daughter.
Yep.
And also
Daisy Ashford.
Daisy Ashford.
Always put those two together, playing their mums.
Playing their mums' roles.
It's
It's interesting how many of them are actually playing close family connections, or either connections there. But yeah, that's a few. There's bound to be more. So in the comments, guys, why don't you tell us who else have we missed? Because I'm sure we've missed lots and lots of others.
Very good. All right, let's crawl up out of the rabbit hole. And I just want to talk for a few minutes about the Doctor Who episodes that Elizabeth has appeared in. The first one Elizabeth appeared in, Doctor Who-wise, is the Secret History. And I know you've listened to that recently, Philip. So number 200 in the main range. And I've mentioned it recently on the podcast, but we'll mention it again since Elizabeth's here. It's a great story, isn't it?
Oh, it's a wonderful story. I mean, Peter Purvis, Maureen O'Brien, and then link them in with Peter Davison as the doctor for them, and then put it in a Roman setting. The whole thing just works.
And Graham Garden as the monk.
Yes, I love the Graham Garden as monk. He's so good. So it's a shame we lost Graham Garden.
Was there any more of him after this, or was this it?
He did a number of monk roles because he was the monk.
He did the eighth Doctor. Then he did this. And I don't recall anything after this.
No, he may not have done. I mean, I do love the latest monk too, which is who's the latest monk?
Rufus Hound.
Rufus Hound, and Rufus is brilliant too. The monk is such a good character. Yeah, surprised he's never returned to the TV, but maybe he will because Big Finish has done such a great job with him, and he's such a complex little character. Not evil as such, but just... This
was all Graham Garden did. He only did the 8th Doctor ones. He did 1, 2, 3, 4 episodes of 8th Doctor and this episode. That's it.
Is that all? He feels really embedded to Big Finish, though, with only 5 stories.
He does. I mean, he was in a couple of other stories not playing the monk in other guest roles, but yeah, they're the only 2.
Yeah. But I know Elizabeth Morton has a great role in terms of the Roman woman that she plays, and I suspect that her role there is why she came back in Cicero, because she also returns, doesn't she? Which is non-Doctor Who, but that's Cicero.
Why should people listen to Cicero?
People should listen to all those
originals
because they are so brilliantly written and acted, and are just amazing stories. I'm just thinking of any of the originals. All the originals are stunning in different ways. But Cicero, it's Roman history, it's politics, it's kind of the West Wing done in Roman times, but it's got lovely intrigue in terms of courtroom drama. It's got a great court case happening. It's got all these different elements all running at the same time, and just really, really brilliantly acted, and a stunning cast, and Elizabeth's part of that.
And speaking of other non-Doctor Who that she's in, she was in an episode of the Avengers, the Lost Episodes, which was the first set of Avengers stories that Big Finish put out, weren't they?
They were. So the Avengers, but I've not seen any of the original Avengers they TV show produced, and I think there's only a few episodes that have survived out of that whole first season. I think it might be 7 surviving episodes out of 20 or whatever. And
if that.
So Big Finish was able to reproduce and recreate those missing episodes. And
they're really good too, those episodes. If you've not seen them, I can't believe you haven't seen them, but they're so different to the later episodes. It's
right.
Like
So I've seen
a totally different show.
Blackman on. So I've seen from second season on everything, right. But that first, I've not actually seen. But it is a very different feel, and certainly the audio picks it up. So the Big Finish range, it's very 60s, early 60s, very spy, espionage. It does feel so over the period. The music is just wonderful, and it's that slightly heightened acting that they do, and the very clear RP. But it's great little stories. Then all those early box sets of the Avengers, really worth listening to, and pick up on sale. They're quite cheap.
Yeah, and one other story that she was in, the classics range, was Dracula. She was in that too. I haven't heard that one myself, but many of the classics I have heard, and they always do a great job at those too. So
Mark Gatiss loves these classics.
For an even larger role, Elizabeth had a guest starring role in The Waters of Amsterdam, another Fifth Doctor adventure. Strange how she keeps getting lumped with the Fifth Doctor, isn't it?
Yeah, strange. Maybe
how does that work?
Save on travel and parking. They travel together.
Carpooling. They carpool. So she had a great role there. And I don't know if you remember The Waters of Amsterdam, written by Jonathan Morris. It's got Janet Fielding, Sarah Sutton, and it's set immediately after the Arc of Infinity. So when they come back and pick up Tegan after being left at Heathrow for that while. So there's a lot of sort of backstory behind what Tegan got up to in that interim time between Time Flight and the Arc of Infinity. And during that time, she got into a relationship that she sort of didn't really want to stay in. The guy was trying to propose to her all the time, and she was trying to get out of it. So that was really, really interesting. Turns out the guy that that's proposing to her is an android. So that makes the story interesting as well. That's why he's so perfect. But yeah, a great story, and Elizabeth has a great role in that too. So I would recommend anyone have a listen to that. So what I'll do is I'll throw in a trailer for The Waters of Amsterdam, and then we'll come back with the star villain of that piece, Elizabeth Morton.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions.
Nessa, are you all right?
I thought I saw something in the canal, just out of the corner of my eye.
What sort of something?
Doctor Who, The Waters of Amsterdam.
It's almost as if the rain is trying to get in.
It is.
What?
This rain isn't a naturally occurring phenomenon.
What do you mean?
Watch out! The window!
Behind me! All of you! Behind me!
They're forming out of the rain!
Ah, there you all are. I thought you might be in trouble. And it turns out I was completely right.
It's no use. Those things are everywhere.
Every canal, every storm drain, every dripping gutter. You may be right.
You are Max Tildak, of course, Valentine.
It's no good. We're surrounded.
You have been sentenced to execution.
Ready, all of you. When I say run, run.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Run!
Well, it's my great pleasure to welcome Elizabeth Morton. G'day.
Hello. Morning.
Morning for you, evening for us.
Yes.
Well, obviously we're interested in hearing about your book, which has just recently been released, called The Orphans from Liverpool Lane. I'll get to that soon, but I'll just go through some of your other books. You've got A Liverpool Girl, A Last Dance in Liverpool, Angel of Liverpool, and The Girl from Liverpool. I'm sensing a theme there.
Yeah, I'm picking a theme there too.
What's your connection to Liverpool?
Well, I'm from Liverpool, and my family my dad was one of 10 and his father died, and it's all very fertile ground for retold stories and imagined stories. And I'd been writing I'd been writing scripts and drama, and I happened upon the genre of saga writing through my agent, really, and through another writer. And actually, it was very much a feeling of coming home. So saga writing, which I really enjoy, is it's very genre based. So Liverpool, in all the titles are chosen by the publishers. Liverpool is it's kind of universal in that lots of people emigrated from Liverpool, the connection with the Beatles, and also my books, because of their themes, there is this huge connection. So also in the genre sagas, you write quickly, and you build up a readership, and they like to know where the book is set, what they're going to, the tone of the book. So that's why Liverpool is in all the titles. I don't choose it, but it's very much part of the genre.
Because Liverpool's become quite a modern city. But what was it like What was it like when you were young, growing up in it?
Well, I grew up in, I remember the 1980s, and it was a pretty depressed city. And in fact, I look back, I do quite a lot of research, and I look back at films and photographs of the 1980s and the 1970s, and it's kind of almost Dickensian. It was a fantastic city to grow up in, because I think there is always this sense of, especially where I was brought up a little further down the coast, and there's a sense of kind of looking outwards, and so you want to get away from it, but you want to bring it with you when you get away. Well, that's how I felt about it. Very vibrant music, the theatre, that all fantastic place to have for your imagination, really. But the town, it was the times of, the poverty that came with the decline of industry and the docks. And of course now it's really different, and it still is. If if you go beyond the centre of Liverpool, there is still great deprivation, but there's a feeling of renewal and some amazing cultural, the Tate and the docks, and if you've never been to Liverpool, please come to Liverpool, because it's a wonderful city. But when I was growing up, it was football was the thing, football and music, and just that fighting spirit. I think the fighting spirit, because of what happened with the dock workers. So my dad and his family were remembered what my dad did work at the docks, actually, before, when he was young, used to go down there, and people would come along and employ you on the day. So that there is that very there's a fighting spirit in Liverpool, which I try to bring in my books. This is not about Doctor Who at all, is it? I mean,
we'll get to it. Don't you worry. We'll get to that. I wanted to ask it particularly about your latest book, the Orphans from Liverpool Lane. I was really touched by the opening scenes of that book personally, because I'll tell you my personal story. I was born in the early 70s at a time when young unwed mothers were sort of frowned upon, and babies were taken away for adoption from their mothers. Sometimes mothers would have a pillow slapped over their face and the baby's taken away without them even being seen. And that was me. I was one of those babies taken away. Fortunately, I had a fantastic upbringing. I was adopted by beautiful parents. But the scenes resonated with me, the opening scenes, even though they were different. It was a different time. Yes. Those scenes where what was an unwed mother to do in those days, where she went to the orphanage and left the baby there. That really touched me. So where did the idea for this come from? I think the Orphans of the Living, you've got a bit of a connection through your grandmother to that story.
Yes. So I was from a very religious family. So my father's family, there were many of them. One was a nun and a priest. So I spent a lot of time in and out of these institutions. So I kind of know how they smell and how they feel. And the unwed mothers thing was, I mean, that's so interesting that you've got personal experience, Dwayne, because there were some experiences that were positive and there were some experiences that were not so positive. And the Orphans of the Living, it was after I had written the book, which is always, I've said, this is my version of time travel. After I wrote the book, I was talking to one of my uncles who's in the 90s. And he'd read another book that I'd written this along the same theme. And he said, "Oh, you got it just right." He said, "They were just like that, the girls in the orphanage." And I said, "What do you mean, the girls in the orphanage?" And bearing in mind this is after I'd written the book. And he said, "Well, when my grandmother became widowed, they did what everyone does in that Catholic community. They turned to the priest, and the younger siblings were put in an orphanage." Now, weirdly, my orphanage, I'd written about it. It was completely fictitious. I'd made it up, and yet there was an orphanage near to the place where I grew up. And in later life, my family became involved with the orphanage in various ways. My father was a headmaster, so it was an obvious connection. But he never spoke to us about that time. It was only my uncle, my father died when I was quite young, so never had the opportunity to talk about that. But I then started thinking, can we inherit memory without actually, remembering being told? Is it hearing other people talking about it? Do you get these snippets? And of course, if you're a writer and you just let your imagination take over, and then another very similar thing happened in an earlier book I wrote. And I wrote about when we were in Liverpool, my dad used to always tell a story. We'd go under what they call the Tate and Lyle chute in the docks, where the sugar used to travel from one side of the road to the other and go to the Tate and Lyle factory. And he always used to say, "Oh, if you're naughty, who knows, you'll drown in that sugar." And he used to talk about this drowning in the sugar, and we'd all laugh. And then when the book came out, I'd imagined this incident because I thought it was very obviously visual and interesting. And I wrote in the back of the book in my acknowledgements, "Thank you to my dad. I don't know whether that story was true or not. However, great to be able to use that as a springboard." And then a cousin got in touch and said, "Yes, the story was true. And it was your dad's sister-in-law's cousin or brother who had drowned in the sugar." So in fact, when he was telling us that story, he didn't say this happened to someone, or did he? And then I'm thinking again, the same things, these moments that we, hear, these snippets, fragments, when are they all on the hard drive and you bring it together, but you're not actually sure where it's from. So it was quite startling to hear that I mean, my family, it was, my grandmother then got a job. So after she had these children, and after she put them in the orphanage, she was able to take them back home. And because they had elder siblings, I think it was, you know, the elder looked after the younger. But yes, so it's I do feel compelled to put these stories to paper, and you know, write a entertaining and you know, enjoyable book. The genre always demands an uplifting ending, and that suits me. So, but that's very touching, Dwayne, to know that's, and of course in Australia, I mean, I write in this book about the children being sent away.
I noticed that too. Yeah.
Yes, you know that you. I'm sure you know a lot of families where this happened, and it's only really now in the last 10 years that I think people are looking back and thinking.
Yeah, possibly in the generation behind me as well, even more so, because there was much more stigma. When I was born, things were starting to change a little bit, where there was a bit more support for younger mothers.
The terrible stigma of being an unmarried, you know, it was so wrong, wasn't it? It was so unfair. But that was when the church had an enormous hold, and you know, we were terrified. I was terrified. You know, it would have been, you know, just such a shocking thing, and there's generations out there that you need to keep talking about it, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of shocking things, I noticed in your introduction too that you'd spent some time playing the piano accordion in Northern Working Men's Clubs. Tell us about that.
Why is that shocking? Well,
I was just trying to segue, that's all.
No, it's a good segue. Yes, well, so I had a real pull and push, because I was an actress before I was a writer, and so I was I was in dancing school, and my mum was a piano teacher, and her mum ran a dancing school. So I had on this side, her brother was a violinist, so all this side, that, you know, quite I loved that, and I wanted to, you know, to perform. And then the other side was the Catholic religious side, and so there was a real clash. So I started playing the piano accordion because it was very Irish, and I used to play it in church, believe it or not. And then someone came along and said she was a manager for a group called Our Kids in Liverpool, and she said, I'm putting a band together, girls. Do you want to be in the band? And I was I play the piano accordion. So, oh yes, we don't. So then next thing, I'm playing the accordion in all sorts of like British Legion clubs, and then when I went to London to be an actress, I went to Guildhall, and we were all, as it got to leaving, we all discovered we had to have an equity card. Without an equity card, you couldn't have you couldn't get a job. And so I went back to the club. So I said to my dad, right, I'll go back on my own. And I rang up an agent and said, I'm looking for work. I'm play the piano. And over the phone, he said, British Legion Club, Kirby, Saturday night. And so I was there with my piano accordion singing.
Can I say, I played piano accordion for years.
No,
I actually did 8th grade piano accordion, but I tried that for our Sydney Conservatorium High School of music, and they wouldn't accept me because they didn't count the piano accordion as a musical instrument.
No.
So I couldn't get into the Conservatorium of Music because of that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing! How appalling, though. Yes, you see, no one ever took me seriously either. So there you go.
No.
But it's great. I've found in later years, it's a great instrument when, you know, a party, if you've got family and everyone's playing an instrument and whatever, you know, it's great for that, isn't it? Do you still
It's a
play
very
now?
jolly instrument, isn't it?
Yeah, I occasionally pull it out for the kids because they find it more amusing. I mean, they all play real instruments. I mean, piano chord is only one of my instruments. It was my first one when I started when I was 4. But none of the kids take it seriously. But I mean, I used to go busking with it and, you know, earn some money over the holidays. And yeah,
because you're a one-man band, aren't you?
Exactly. You do everything.
Yeah.
You mentioned your acting before, and your first television, I've got to mention that because I was a young teenager at the time, and I came across this show on television called the Tripods. And being a young teenager, I was in love with every girl that appeared on the screen in that show, and you were one of them. So when I saw that was your first television, I was thrilled. So what can you I have to ask you about the Tripods. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that was one of my first jobs out of drama school. It was fantastic, partly because it was the BBC, and in those days, it felt like they had money. So as a consequence, we filmed some of it in Manchester, and then it's like, right, we're all going off to Switzerland now. It was unbelievable. So we all went off to Switzerland in this beautiful hotel, and we filmed. So there's Lisa Maxwell, John Shackley, and Kerry, and it just seemed a kind of glorious, easy shoot. You know, I'm sure behind the scenes it wasn't, but I couldn't believe it. I kind of thought, oh my gosh, you know, this if I could continue with this job is amazing. Not that job, but I mean being an actor. But it was very detailed. You know, the costumes were very, and the makeup, it was very it was a children's show, and yet it was really well thought out. And of course the books are I think probably, we didn't know the books at the time. You would have known if you were a sci-fi, but they weren't known. But the books were fantastic. We filmed also. We filmed at the games. Do you remember the games? At one point, I remember filming in a dog stadium. Where would that have been? I think it was in Manchester.
Yeah,
yes.
That was a dog stadium, was it? It looked like a real stadium. It was great.
Yeah. And I think so. I mean, it was really. And then another funny thing happened on that job was we had a great guy called David Edwards, and he was, in my mind, he was just the guy who drove us around. I think he was probably the first. And I met him many years later with Peter I think Peter was filming At Home with the Braithwaites. And I was like, oh, David, you were driving on this show? And he's like, oh, I'm the director now. so he'd sort of gone, you know, kind of gone, his career had progressed, but he was great at the time, just, you know, and I was good friends with Lisa Maxwell. It was amazing. Yes, it was. And in fact, someone's trying to get some kind of reunion together this summer here. I'm in touch with someone in New Zealand. Apparently it was much loved in New Zealand. It must have travelled in a way that we weren't aware of.
It was paid for by Channel 7 Australia. So partly. They could, partly. Yeah. So that's probably what funded your trip to Switzerland.
Good. That's great. No,
but it's probably also what sent the production broke, so you couldn't film series 3.
Maybe. I don't know why they cancelled it. It was a shame.
Bizarre thing.
Yes, because it was successful. You know, people watched it, but.
Well, wow. Dwayne talks about it all the time.
It's still successful to me, even though it's incomplete. But, yeah,
it was amazing music. I remember that. Who did the music?
The name's gone from my mind, but yes, you're right.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Is it Ken Freeman? Was that his name? No?
Oh yeah, Ken Freeman.
Was that him? Yeah. Not too long after that, you were working on Jeeves and Worcester. Is that right?
Yes.
So before Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry were massive, I suppose they were pretty big then, but they got even bigger after that. What are your memories of working with them?
I mean, it was great fun because the scripts were so funny. The scripts, P.G. Wodehouse, they're so funny, so you couldn't help but, even when you're overrunning and things are going wrong. I seem to remember that was one of the things that was, time was always running out. That was a bit of a, because it was a big costume drama. But we filmed it, and I funny enough, I was at a pub quiz the other day, and one of the questions was, what famous castle was Highclere Castle famous for? And of course the answer is it was the location for Downton Abbey. But I got an extra point because it was actually my house in my dad's house in Jeeves and Worcester. That's where we filmed all the scenes, the Madeline Bassett scenes. So that was amazing as well, because we got to meet, all the people who were running the house. They did 4 series, and I was in the last 2. And they did have a habit of recasting. They'd get a new director in, of course they couldn't recast Hugh and Stephen, so they would often recast some of the other characters. And I thought, Madeline will be on the block. But fortunately, it was a director I'd worked with who directed London's Burning, who was employed to do the last series. So he said, oh, well, I'll have Elizabeth, but I'll put her in a brown wig instead of a blonde wig. Every director sort of wants to make their stamp. So I was lucky to do 2 series, but it was, and they were very charming and funny, as you'd expect them to be. Their thing, I think at the time they were known for their comedy, a bit of Fry and Laurie. That was, but yes, you're right. They went on, but it was perfect casting. They were perfectly cast. And I love the slapstick nature of it as well. And Hugh was very physically very funny with that. That was great, to be part of.
Yeah, they're both hilarious. Now, I was listening to a Big Finish CD today that you were listed as being cast in, but you weren't in it too much. It was called The Secret History. I don't know if you remember that story, but what struck me was the extras, because you appeared with Peter on the extras, and you were talking about how you got together, and I'd forgotten all about that. Because that story was about a character called the Meddling Monk, who was originally played in Doctor Who on television by Peter Butterworth. So what's the connection between Peter Butterworth and you and your husband meeting?
Okay, so yes, it's all coming full circle. So I worked with Peter's son, Tyler Butterworth. He was an actor, and we were very close friends. And Tyler had just done a series with Peter called, I can't remember, it was a comedy series. And anyway, Tyler basically set us up on a blind date, which was very sweet, because I'd been offered 2 jobs. I'd been offered an episode of Campion and a very peculiar practice, and I couldn't do either of them because I think I'd been booked to do something else. So I always thought how nice to meet Peter, not through work, but in a social situation. He was a bit sort of hopeless in kind of, he's always said to this day that he asked me out, but I wasn't aware of it. So he always said, well, I tried the first time we met, but the second time we met, again through Tyler, we hit it off, and there you go. So when we did when we were doing the extras on that Doctor, I came to Big Finish because there was an episode where an actress was, for some reason, in America or somewhere. She wasn't available. So they needed someone to read in. So I read in, and then she did her lines after. So this was kind of before the days of, oh, we'll just get her to Zoom, you know. This was long before COVID changed all that. But so that's how I came to Big Finish. So I was just, you know, kind of helping out my husband. And then, then I ended up working for them.
So really by nice. Blind date, did you actually know who? Did you know who you were meeting, or wasn't he turned up? You worked out who he was.
No, I knew. Yes, it wasn't strictly a blind date. Okay. So we had met at this other place where Peter had asked me out, but he kind of asked the whole table out because he was too cat-candid about it. Would you like anyone to come on to someone? Anyone like to come? So I thought, I thought I'm not going to be the only one to go. Oh yes, I'd love to. So this was a second date. It was kind of blind in that I didn't really know it was set up, in that I thought there would be about 7 of us having dinner, but it was very much Peter and I and Tyler and another friend, and then Tyler kind of made his excuses and left. And I was looking for a piano teacher at the time, and I had a piano teacher, and Peter was saying, oh, I'd really like to learn the piano a bit more. Do you have the number of the piano teacher? And that's the piano lessons were never had.
Well, the piano lessons worked. I saw Peter playing the piano on one of your socials. He was singing Happy Birthday to himself.
Yes, yeah.
It did work.
It did work. It did work. But no money was exchanged with third parties. Put it that way. We occasionally sit down and play the piano together. So the years of the piano accordion had paid its dividends in the end, Philip.
That's good to know. I've got my piano behind me, but it's more of a stand now than actually it's not played very often.
Yes, is that my husband standing on it?
Yeah, your husband's up there. I've got several of your husband all around me. It's a bit sad.
That is very sad. You're playing with dollies of Elizabeth's husband. Oh dear.
I've got one right.
Us as well.
Oh, there he is.
Yes.
So what's that like being a member of such a huge Doctor Who family? There's a couple. There's the Troughtons, which you know come and go from Doctor Who, but there's actual doctors in your family. Yeah, the Pertwees too. Yeah. But with a couple of doctors and a couple of a doctor's daughter, and even because there's your immediate family with Georgia included in that too. But there's also, is it George Watkins?
Yes, he's done some.
Is your nephew?
Yes, George, my nephew. He's done Big Finish, and Louis and Joel have both done Big Finish as well. So, what's it like? It's, do you know, it's what you know as the everyday. It becomes the everyday, doesn't it? I mean, I sometimes you notice when you're outside, you know, if we're together in a family, say if we're at the park, David's there and George is there and the kids are there, and sometimes you kind of get a sense of if someone knows Doctor Who, then that is quite you know, unusual. Is it unusual? But it's you know, you still got all the dramas that everyone else has, getting kids through exams and, you know, getting them to school on time and, you know, getting Peter sort of not forgetting his hat, or, you know, all those things that we all just muddle on with. It's no different. But I suppose there is a sense, because it's a family of actors and writers, it's quite, you know, that's occupies a lot of the conversation. I've got an idea for this, or what, wanted it. So that is, that's, but probably if you're in a family of doctors, you'd all be talking about some new medicine that was coming up, or, some terrible, person did in surgery, or I don't know what doctors talk about, but we're a different kind of doctors, of course. So yes, the conversation obviously, but it doesn't occupy our lives entirely. I often think that my writing my books, because as I said, I've written drama before, but writing my books is a way of just having a bit of downtime from the sci-fi. Just because writing a book is incredibly solitary. It has to be. There's no way around it, and so it requires hours sitting on your own and just going, into your own head. You're not, though Peter and I will have back and forth conversations about things I'm writing, but yeah, what's it like? It's okay.
Do you understand the love that fans have for people in your family, or is it a bit bemusing to you?
I think after so many years with Peter, I do understand it. And I know it's really important as well to allow, to embrace that, and to I think I do understand it, because I've seen and met people who for whatever reason are so touched by it, and also that, this might seem odd, but I do understand it, because I've got two sons and they're monumental Doctor Who fans. Aside from everything they're doing, they're like Doctor Who geeks, and
David's a fan too, always was.
And David, yes, of course, and Peter, yeah. But when you see it through your son's or a child's eye in that way, I know what it felt like for them to get to meet Peter Capaldi, Matt Smith, David, it's so then when someone who we don't know has the same feelings towards Peter, then you can understand that, because you've been there. I mean, I never forget the episode with Billie Piper leaving and David, and we didn't know David at the time, and we were at a family party in Liverpool, and Louis, and Joel was a bit young, but Louis just sat sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, and because it was on in the corner of this pub, or like that. And so there is that. I don't know why it is, but I do kind of know, but I'm sure better people can have studied it and would be able to tell you why. But certainly I do understand that it is such that there's a special place in the world for it, because it's very touching and changes people's lives, for the better.
Absolutely. Now, today I was also listening to another Doctor Who adventure for Big Finish that you had a larger role in. It was called The Waters of Amsterdam. And just what's it like working with your husband?
It was great. However, I seem to remember it was quite nerve-wracking in a way. I mean, for both of us, I think probably, he really, I suppose, knows me more as a writer. And so I think he was thinking, oh, what if I'm terrible, or what if, you feel so. And then the other side, I'd was feeling, I'd want to be okay and everything to be okay for Peter. So it was a little bit kind of nerve-wracking, but once we got going, he's very funny, Peter. He's very dry and funny. So I was a bit more underlining, getting the pages in order, or just so that I didn't mess it up. But then by nature, I think I'm quite, well, Peter would say slapdash, but I absolutely appalled by that. But I would say that I have got quite a relaxed nature, I'd like to think. So we met somewhere in the middle. So even though I was nervous, I knew it would be okay. They're great guys, and it was fine. When I do my books, narrate my books, that's always quite funny, because when I write, I forget how many different accents I write, and Peter's always absolutely horrified. He's always saying to me, please write a book with just a Liverpool accent, because it's always I'm trying to do the Irish, and then I'm having to go to the Welsh, and then I'm going somewhere around the world, and I didn't have that problem, but it was they're very supportive, Big Finish, and I've seen that change again from when Peter started. I mean, I seem to remember it was not long after he'd been doing the Bill Baggs things with Mark Gatiss, and that was sort of like fan stuff, and then he began to do the audios, and now it's just amazing how it's become. It's so much part of the Doctor Who canon, really, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
So,
and you yourself haven't just done Doctor Who. You've done things for Big Finish like Cicero. Philip and I really enjoy Cicero. That's a really cool original release from Big Finish. And you've done some Avengers, and you've done Dracula as well with Mark Gatiss.
Vienna too, I think.
Yeah.
Did you do Vienna as well? Oh,
Vienna,
wow. So,
yes.
So what's it like for you with those other productions? Do you enjoy that variety?
Yes, I mean they were all great. Chase, and then each project, each play, drama they're quite distinct from one another. They're and I would often be playing quite a few parts. Actually, I was doing different voices, thinking about it. Just maybe not so many Irish nuns, but I was doing in those Big Finish. I love that, and I like kind of hopping from character to character within one drama. But yeah, it's what's fantastic about audio, especially. I've written for Radio 4 for a crime series, so I kind of know the limitations. But is it because it's sci-fi? It allows you to go so far and wide with your imagination, so you can tell these huge stories. These fantastic stories. Writing for drama on the radio, that you were able to do that. You can suddenly write a scene that's in on a motorway, for example, which you couldn't with the noise and cars and to film something like that you'd have half an eye on the constraint of budgets, but Big Finish audio, the audios just seem to have this huge landscape for storytelling, and I've been lucky to be part of that in these dramas, whizzing around the planets or Dracula with, on a windswept moor, that's great.
you'd had quite a big career in acting. Why the choice to go from acting to writing?
So I'd always actually written, really going as far back to when I was 8 years old. I got a joke published in Bunty magazine, which was like a girl's, and that, I never forget, 8 years, a terrible joke to, why did the chicken or something, but just the feeling, oh my gosh, I mean, the feeling of seeing your words, something that you'd come from your head onto paper and then being shared with people. And so I'd always written, and I'd started off writing prose, and especially when you're an actor and there are those periods out of work inevitably. And so I wasn't very good at just waiting to see, what was coming in next. So I'd always started writing short stories. And then when inevitably when you're an actor, often people say, oh, I'm interested in writing this, could you help? And actually it was Tyler Butterworth who I first wrote something with, and then I decided to go back to my prose writing, which is what I love. And so I began, and in fact, this was Tyler again. Oh my gosh, the meddling monk. Tyler said to me, and I'd met Peter at the time, obviously, and he said, oh, there's a short story competition called the London Writers' Competition. I'd just met Peter. Anyway, I entered the competition, and it was sponsored by Time Out, so it was very kind of urban, and I won it. So about that time, so then that led to more writing opportunities, agents, and I think I got an agent through it, and I'd met Peter, and we started to have a family. And so then it wasn't that I was faced with a kind of terrible choice, acting or writing or children. It was just that I'd acted, and without sounding too sort of prosaic, it was all my acting, it felt, had been leading up to this moment of writing and becoming a writer. So it didn't feel like I was leaving acting and becoming a writer. It really did feel like one was moving into the other. And I continued acting a little bit. I'd had Louis, and then I was pregnant with Joel, and I was in a play. I was writing at the same time. I was beginning to get somewhere with that. I'd written when I was overdue with one of the kids in the 10 days, and so I couldn't act, I wrote a short play and put that into a competition, and that won. And so then I had a 4-month-old baby, and I had this play on, and that was the prize, just on for a couple of nights. I then went off to the Royal Court Young Writers Group. I don't know if you know that, but it's and from there to ITV, Coronation Street, on a bursary. So the writing was just becoming more, it was occupying more and more time. And then I had 2 children, and then Peter was away filming. And so it just, as I say, it wasn't a choice, but I'd waited quite a long time to have a family. Well, not a long time, but I was in my 30s. So I just was ready to do the thing, baby falls asleep, run into a cafe and write another chapter, write another scene. And then that's kind of when I was doing Big Finish as well, moving forward, because again, that's something that was more, but I never wanted to be, I can't see how it would have worked with both of us acting if it meant we were both away, having a small family, young family. unfortunately, I had this creative. So when I was doing the bursary for ITV, it would involve sitting in the story conferences and the storylining in Coronation Street, which was fantastic to hear that and see that. And I learned so much from that. But it was just like a few nights away, or, you know, it wasn't like going off to be the kind of jobs that I had been doing, going off to Oldham Rep for 7-8 weeks, you know. So that's it. I don't, in some strange way, I don't feel I've left acting, because when you're sitting there writing, you're still playing all those parts. It's just...
And you're still playing all the parts when you're reading your audiobooks, aren't you?
Yes, you're still playing the parts in your head. You just connect them all together with telling everyone what it looks like and what it feels like.
So there's a huge juggling act in terms of, I mean, Peter's always been having so much work. He's one of the best working actors in. I mean, acting is so unreliable for work, and yet Peter seems to always have something on the go. And, you know, more recently even onto theatre in terms of musicals and things. How do you balance raising a family, trying to have a writing career, a husband who is either not there or probably there too much, assuming he's not working, he's just always there? Is that a hard balance? Yes.
I think also all those years as an actor, and, you know, life is, there's no certainty, there's no security, there's no job projection. You don't know, you know, you can't book a holiday for 6 months. Well, you can, but, you know, it's harder. All these things were, especially when you're starting out. I remember thinking, oh, you know, you didn't want to commit yourself to other things. And so you learn to live, you know, when the time, if you have time, I think you learn to use it quite well. So certainly, you know, my writing routine has changed. So now I write very early in the morning. Door open. I write very early in the morning, and well, might not be very early but I think for most actors it's only. So I try to get a good 3 hours in before the day starts. But when I had children, it would be, well, they were growing up, it would be when they were in school. So, you know, you take those moments, or, you know, when they were asleep, or also. So I think actors are quite good at adapting to a given situation. So some writers I know are absolutely, you know, they have their routine. They write quite 9 to 5, you know, they'll do that but you never like that as an actor. So in some ways one is not like that as a writer. I mean, at the moment I'm writing, so I'm putting in my next book, just put it in actually. And that is, I'm trying to do, you know, I heard a writer, one of the quite famous writer, giving a talk, and she was talking about how she speaks into her phone in her first draft, because all the inverted commas and the, you know, character headings can sometimes stop the flow. And I do that. I found that really, I enjoy that, walking outside, speaking to the phone without any distractions, and then come home and see what you've got. So how do I do it? Yeah, I think I think I would find it more difficult if I was living a life that was very constrained in terms of, you know, get up the same time every day, do this, you know, go to work, have a holiday, this, you know. I always absolutely love it when I send something off, you know, if I meet a deadline and send it off, I always feel elated because it's like, I have a day, if I do it in the morning, I have a day that is just my day to do anything with, because I've done, I've got there. I still, I'm sure that's all writers feel like that. And then, of course, then it's the rewriting, that's just the beginning when you send something off. But yes, and Peter's, he was, a musical, that is physically hard work. A musical is, stamina, is he was doing quite a few. And I think you change as well, don't you? Your habits change to at what stage you are in life will inform your working habits as well, When you're younger, when you don't have kids, and, you'd think nothing of just jumping on a train or, going off to living in digs when you're doing theatre, and, that just changes. So you just adapt. So it's fine.
You've written for radio in the past. Have you or has Peter ever suggested the possibility of pitching something for Big Finish, or is that just not your jam?
You're making me think about this, because I haven't really thought about it carefully before, because no one's asked us to do it. So that's fine. If I'm honest, I think I would have to. I mean, I love the idea of that. Of course, that would be fantastic. But I think, in fact, again, thinking about, funny enough, my son has just finished a degree, and his final year was all about writing for radio. So, and the other son's written as well. So if I did anything, I think I'd have to get a sort of sci-fi arm wing of the family, with Peter bringing up the rear. I don't know if Peter would do it.
Well, Doctor Who has lots of historicals. You could set it in Liverpool.
I could say historical Liverpool story.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I write historical fiction. And the Orphans of the Living and all that. It's absolutely. But I would absolutely need someone like Louis and Joel to kind of sit down with me and bring their knowledge of the genre to what I have to offer. So maybe, who knows. I'm very admiring of sci-fi writers, because I think they've just got this kind of thing going on, this geek thing somewhere. It just lends it brilliantly to the storytelling. I am writing at the moment. We've been asked if we would be interested to write a crime novel, because the thing that I wrote for radio was a crime series, a couple of episodes. So Peter and I have started that, but it's lively.
Working together.
Sorry.
Working together's lively.
It's but I'm enjoying it. I really am enjoying writing crime. We set it in the 1920s because we both have a bit of experience of that period as well. So, and that's fun to write about. Anyway, let's see if we get anywhere with that before I say too much about it. But I do enjoy writing. Bringing different. He's very good at the kind of procedural stuff, you
mentioned in your book, in the acknowledgements, his logical brain.
Yes, yeah, that's it. So I'll be like, oh, I want this to happen. Wouldn't this be so sad? And this we can have, and he'd be saying, but that happened, in 1952. They didn't have ambulances that would get there quick enough. It's that kind of bringing those two sides of the brain together. I think it is exciting.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So, if we were to seek out your books now, they are not under the name Elizabeth, are they? They're Eliza Morton.
Yes.
Is that because there's an Elizabeth Morton in the US? Is that right?
No, that's because it's not uncommon in saga writing when you have a series. So the first 4 books were all set in one particular mother and baby home. And I've been commissioned to write a trilogy for the Orphans of the Living. So they just wanted something that would slightly set it apart, but not too far, so that you know when you were getting these books where they would be set, and the story is kind of a continuation. So that's the reason for that.
Oh, gotcha. So it's only the Orphans of the Living books that are under the name Eliza?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I've been commissioned to write 3. So
can I just say thank you so much for spending so much time with us, and I wish you all the best for this book that's just come out and all the rest to follow.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions.
Brother Samson?
Yeah, that's me.
I'm Brother Steed.
Hey?
He expects an attack on his life. An attack is made, and it fails. What then?
You've got to speak for me, Weber.
You have made a mistake that can have very terrible consequences.
Well, I appreciate that your surveyors have to...
They're arsonists, not surveyors, Mr. Andre. They're going to burn you out.
Get out of me way.
Get it off him!
What is it? I thought I heard something. Back there.
I can't see anything.
Doesn't mean there's nothing.
Get that table! What? The table, get it, quick! Wedge it in front of the door.
Answer, darling.
Oh, sorry.
Did I make you jump?
Yes, you did, rather.
I'm going to the balcony. No, Your Majesty,
Are you all right?
You don't just need a buyer. You need a miracle.
My dear Mrs. Cartwright, we should accept the inevitable and relax. I'm going to be here for some days, so I suggest you make the best of it.
You don't give me much choice.
What is all the
Now start walking, Steed. You are going to meet your friend.
I want that fruit to rot right where it is. Goodbye, Peter.
Hey, wait a minute.
So that's the way you want it, is it, Frank?
Where's the money?
What's been happening? Shiny sort of a lad, isn't he?
Very uncooperative. But he seems efficient enough in his own way.
Why do you devote so much time to my little projects? All right. Don't answer.
I can't hear you.
Don't worry. It's only 7 o'clock. There's lots of time to think about it.
The Avengers, The Lost Episodes, Volume 4.
So we're very grateful to Elizabeth for spending some time with us, having a chat. It's been really interesting getting to know Elizabeth, and particularly about her work too. I'm interested in her stories.
Yeah, very interesting, and fascinating woman, and really interesting to see what she has to say. So thanks for setting that up, Dwayne. That was great.
And she was in the tripods. I've got to talk to people who are in the tripods.
Yeah, I know. That was really what it was about, wasn't it? We all know it was about the tripods.
That was the whole plan.
I know. That's okay. You're allowed to do that. That's why I get all the Blake 7 people in too.
All right. That's almost all for today. It only leaves us to recommend something. And what I'd like to recommend... Oh, hang on. No, my list says it's your turn. What would you like to recommend, Philip?
I am going to recommend Daleks, Genesis of Terror. So it's only just recently come out, and there's been a bit of hatred about why has this been released and we don't need it. Can I say, if you are after a complete audio play, this isn't for you. But if you love Doctor Who, the TV series, if you love research, if you love knowing where things came from and what could have been, this is a really great release. So it's based on, it's episode 1 of the Genesis of the Daleks, but this is Terry Nation's original script before it got Robert Holmesified. And it is just fascinating listening to it. I've really enjoyed it for lots of reasons. Without giving spoilers, though, that being said, it's not a lot of spoilers to give because you all know Genesis of the Daleks. It starts off with narration, and I don't like narration generally in stories. I think people know. I love the Companion Chronicles. I love the main range and plays. All those sort of mid-range stuff with narration and acting, I've never been a fan of that. But in this case, the narration are the stage directions, and it's Terry Nation stage directions. And so actually hearing exactly what Terry was thinking in his vision is really fantastic. So Nick Briggs does the narration. It's really well done. And so you're getting to hear all the stage directions plus what the original script was. Now, this, of course, is a story I know backwards. When I was a kid, I got the LP record. I've listened to Genesis Daleks hundreds, maybe thousands of times on that record over and over again. And then when the CD came out and we reviewed it only fairly recently, sometime. So it's a story that I know really well. And so I know all the dialogue. And so hearing what the original dialogue was and where it's close to and where it's not quite and where Robert Holmes has changed things, for me, this was just the most fascinating piece to listen to as a piece of history. So, people who love, most Doctor Who fans love that background stuff and love the production notes and love things, to actually hear what could have been what the original script sounded like, hearing the actors play. I mean, it's not a huge, the episode 1 hardly has anyone in the main cast, so it hasn't got a lot of people. Once again, Dr. Sarah, Harry played competently by the usual people who are playing them now. Tom Baker is sounding the oldest I've heard him sound. So I think this was recorded more recently. A lot of the stuff we're still hearing coming through in terms of Tom Baker main range, the monthly releases, was recorded 4 or 5 years ago. Whereas I think this was only recorded in the last few months or last 6 months or so. And so this is the first time I actually listened and thought, actually, he's sounding old. But it's still Tom, and you want Tom to give the lines, and Tom gives a performance like no one else can give a performance. Yeah, highly recommended. As I said, it's received lots of hate on Twitter and other places in terms of unnecessary. But for people who love their facts, it's brilliant. Listen to it because it's just wonderful. And the music, sound design, all that background stuff, and just to hear the slight differences, love it. Brain, what have you been listening to?
Well, do you recall recently I was asking you about reviews and whether they sway your listening? I actually saw some of your review. You put out reviews in little tweets. So recently you tweeted out how good you thought the latest Ninth Doctor box set was, Pioneers.
Yep.
And I hadn't heard it yet. And I thought, that sounds interesting. Because I was, for various reasons, I was a little bit disappointed with the previous set. So I wasn't diving straight in. I wasn't that excited. But I gave Pioneers a listen, and wow, it matched my expectations based on your tweets that you made. So I was thrilled, and particularly there's one story there in the middle written by Rob Valentine called Northern Lights.
Yep.
And there is a scene at the end where the historical character gets taken to the North Pole because he never got there in his lifetime, and it's such a joyous scene. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Yep. It's probably my favourite scene of the whole box set, if you can pick out a specific scene. And the Ninth Doctor just sharing in the joy of giving someone else joy, like a goal that they never achieved in their life, and helping with that, considering the life this person had. I can't remember the name. Danson. Can't remember what the historical character's name is. As one of those characters where I instantly went on to Google and started searching and doing a bit of research on the character because I hadn't heard of him, and I thought, but I feel like I should know this character. I think everyone should.
Yeah. Yeah,
because
he was viewed as a bit of a villain because he beat Scott to the South Pole, and it was Armiston, but he was part of Armiston's. I'm pretty sure he was part of Armiston's group, and got to the South Pole before Scott, and of course Scott died on the way.
Or was it the other guy? The other guy did, because there was two guys.
There's two of them. One of them was with Armiston anyway.
I think it was Johansson was the name of the guy that went south.
As I said, my Norwegian history isn't great. but it's interesting that because we remember Scott as the hero, even though he died, and Armiston and his group are always made to be the villains when they were just doing what they were being explorers and adventurers and got there first and did it better because they survived. But of course, history is always written by the English white people, so it's interesting hearing the Norwegian history and these characters being brought to life, which it ticks off all those Doctor Who boxes of making you love history, which is what it did for me too. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. So that's what I've been listening to, and based on your recommendation, I loved it. So I can heartily recommend it too.
Good stuff. There's a couple of good things have really come out recently. So it's nice to be able to wave a flag and say, listen to this for these reasons.
Yes, for sure. It was also nice to hear Kat Armitage as well, who we've had on the show after her first story a few years ago now, actually.
Yep.
And she's so excited and exuberant about her work writing for Doctor Who. So it was lovely to hear her voice again in the extras.
It was three great stories and very different stories.
Yep. All right, that'll do us for this instalment of the Sirens of Audio. Been great to have the pleasure of your company, Philip.
And as always, you too, Dwayne.
All right, we'll catch you all next time.
Bye, everyone.
This has been the Sirens of Audio, episode 157, The Doctor's Wife, with our guest Elizabeth Morton and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Original theme music composed by Joe Kramer. Our website is sirensofaudio.com. Comment below to let us know what you thought of the episode, or contact us via email at sirensofaudio@gmail.com or any one of our socials. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll hear you next time.